Vi har jo noen tilreisende I dag, og vi har besøk fra Nederland. Nicolas fra Smart Building Collective. Dere har jo alle sammen hørt om liksom, BREEAM-sertifiseringer og det ene og andre. Men disse gjør ting på en litt annen måte. Nicolas, welcome. All the way from the Netherlands. Stage yours.
And I wish I could say something about how nice all the presentations have been, but to be honest, I have no idea what was said. So, but one thing I can recommend is don't watch an AI presentation where you don't understand what's being spoken about, because it's actually terrifying. But I think there's a really nice bridge there from that talk, from whatever he said. I hope it wasn't too scary. To the way we look at smart buildings, technology, data. And it really starts with, it's not about the data, it's about what we do with it. And it's the same with AI. You know, at the end of that chain, after the computers have done all of their optimization or you know, design or whatever it is, there still needs to be a conversion to action and to change and to making things better together. So smart is becoming standard, but where is the context? You know, I think it was about seven years ago, we were doing all kinds of research into the office environment, looking at what is the impact of the built environment on people? And you can change everything, and then now with technology, you can actually measure these things, and you can quantify them, and you can actually see how things are changing. So in 2020, you know, after doing a bunch of research studies where we were building these living labs from scratch and then watching them, you know, we'd do these amazing studies, but then those living labs would die because there was no human process behind it. All that technology would, in a way, go to waste. So we said, where is there a standard that we can just plug into, and as a community, as an industry, for all of those different stakeholders, study this more effectively together. So in 2020, we launched the Smart Building Certification in February, a month before COVID hit. So that was an interesting time because no building wanted you to come onto their premise to study things. But we went through it, and we built this certification. And after certifying about 20 buildings, we saw that not a single one of them was the same. They were completely different, and I think you all recognize that. Every stakeholder or group within the building is different. Every building is different. All of the tech providers and solution providers are doing different things at different scope, at different depth. So how on earth can you start to kind of assess that and make sense of all of this noise in a way? Where is the context when it comes to all these things? So we developed the Smart Building Certification Framework based on the functionality and the human side of buildings. And it's broken down into a number of different pillars. So building usage is really looking at how well does the FM or the investors or the organization behind the building have control over how that asset is being used. Neowit is a perfect example of functionality and technology to help you grab control of how the building is being used, how people are coming in and out, which amenities they're using, all of the things that you may want to know about how it's being used. Building performance is more on the sustainability side. How is the energy consumption? How is the water consumption? How are the different aspects of the building actually performing to the promise of how it was designed? And this is a bigger ask than said. I think the statistic is crazy in the sense of like 90% of buildings don't perform as designed when they go live. So how do we get control over that building performance? Building environment is all about health and well-being. What is the indoor air quality? What is the light? What is the sound? How do we make for an optimal, healthy building for the inhabitants of that building, and make sure that it's good for performance, good for productivity, and giving people what they need out of these buildings? Safety and security becoming a very important topic and will only become more important as we go forward. But this is about physical safety and also digital. Cybersecurity is no longer nice to have, it's a must have. And if we don't have it, it actually comes down to life or death in some of these built environments. So we need to be looking at that. And then user behavior and collaboration. How do people interact with each other and interact with the building? All of these things are brought together with infrastructure and connectivity. Of course, without that infrastructure and connectivity, the whole thing falls over. And integrative design is an interesting one because we're actually starting to say, how can we, with the least amount of technology, so we're not coming in to say that a building needs to have all the technology in the world. Actually, how can we, with the least amount of technology, impact all of these different areas? And this is where it gets really interesting, because after these 20 buildings, we were formally called actually the Smart Building Certification. We saw that 20 buildings, not a single one was the same, and the emphasis was different, the focus was different. Some were very much about sustainability and ESG, some were about health and well-being, some are about security and safety. We actually changed our name last year to the Smart Building Collective because we believe that this is something we need to be doing together. So we're working now towards the first crowdsourced certification in the world, where the best buildings and the best solutions and the best people that we find help us to give shape to the future. And what you'll see with buildings is that emphasis is on different areas, as I just mentioned. So what we do is we benchmark on the whole, holistically about building against building, but we also benchmark on all of these sub-different areas. And what that allows us to do is to celebrate buildings for their uniqueness, for their focus, for their contribution and where they put the attention to, and drill down into the areas where there's opportunity, things to focus on for the future. No building has it all, no building should have it all, but what are the things that we can turn over and find opportunity in? So what I wanted to do today is talk a little bit about this uniqueness of buildings. And I'm going to go through a couple of our platinum cases and just kind of explain to you how they beat the benchmark in a way, how they move the benchmark forward. So the first one you guys have already heard a lot about. And how many people have already been in this building or seen it or know where it is? Okay, there's a few. I recommend it. I think it's an incredible building, and I wish I knew what you said, Martin. I hope you did your building justice in your story. But we had the pleasure of certifying this building over the last year, and this building is incredible. And I think some of the things to pull out of this building that are kind of leading the pack in what we've seen from other buildings and other developers that we've worked with is their focus on sustainability, of course, but also their flexibility. So this building is very much flexible for however they decide to use it in the future. However big the tenant is or however small the tenant is, the building can completely change its grid for those tenants, giving them their own smart building infrastructure, their own data entry, their own access to these kinds of utilities and sustainable aspects. But another thing that I'd like to highlight about Martin and his team, and actually that's something that a lot of the buildings we are involved with agree on, is they didn't set out to build the smartest building, they set out to build the best building, and that really shows. And how they work with suppliers and how they work with the community, they're collaborative, they're open, and they make sure that they're trying things, testing things, and it's just it's an incredible living lab. So if you ever have the opportunity to work with this team, I highly recommend it. It's been inspiring to say the least. The next building that this was the first building that we certified in Amsterdam. This is the Edge Olympic by Edge Technologies. And Edge Technologies, they built the original smart building. They built the first smart building. And so it was incredible to be a part of kind of the realization of this building. But this building has what they call a control center. So they have a control center run by a supplier company. And this company manages 300 buildings from afar, and they do first and second line support from afar. Whenever something goes down or CO2 goes too high or whatever it may be, this team steps in from afar and can fix the majority of everything in this building. And I think it speaks to the future of FM in the sense that we used to send a supplier to the place of work and look at the sensor and be like, I think it's broken, I'm not sure, and then they would leave and do that 2 or 3 times, whereas we can now start to cut out a lot of that extra work. They continue to build some of the best and most iconic buildings in the world, and they're definitely a developer to follow. And they are both from a sustainability and a smart perspective, top of the heap and absolutely incredible. The third building, which I find really inspiring as well, and I think what's so interesting is that each one of them are so different, but this one was built by Art and Vest in Hamburg, Germany, and they repurposed the Expo that came out of Italy, and they also had this be their flagship smart building. And what they did is they had, so what you have in some of these buildings with that framework is you have some buildings that do this with 30 technologies, all of those different aspects. And you have some buildings that do it with 5 or 6. And this is one of those buildings that just used a very slim 5 to 6 technologies and put them all into this building. What's also really interesting about them is that they incubated those technologies. So as a company, what they did is they invested in these technologies and then worked with them constantly to really make sure that those technologies were synergistic with each other, that they worked well with each other, but not just from a technical perspective, but also that social cohesion. The other aspect that has them leading the way in our benchmark is in their governance structure. So what you see often with smart buildings right now is you see that the governance is either spread across the organization. There's a little bit of smart in every little piece of the organization and doesn't speak quite coherently with each other. But what they did is they created a smart building team. And this smart building team is 100% responsible for the technology, the data, and making sure it all works. And then what they do is they liaise with all of the different departments. So one of the main learnings that we like to share is think about your governance structure and how you make it operable. How do you make sure that with a smart building you can actually use it? Because again, it's not about the data, it's about what we do with it that matters. And if you can have all the technology in the world, but if you can't use it and you don't know how to use it, and you don't have an organization in place to use it, it's all for naught. And this organization has done an incredible job in maximizing that potential and that opportunity. The last building I want to talk about is Workery Plus in Helsinki. This was also a platinum certified smart building. And what was so interesting about this one was that what you see, and I think Martin was hinting to it about maturity of smart, right? On the basic level, if you have a sensor that gives you CO2 and gives you a little bit of insight, that's nice, and that helps, and it's awareness, and it helps people know what kind of environment they're in and these types of things. But there's a whole nother level when that CO2 sensor is speaking to the BMS, is speaking to the HVAC system, is speaking to your occupancy management, your room booking, and that it's all integrated. And that is what we call a higher level of maturity when it comes to smart. And they are so far ahead in this that the business model around this real estate is changing. You know, when we say, oh, do you expect the same price for square meter price? And they actually laugh at it in a way, and they say, actually, that's not even the game anymore. The technology allows us to manage business process in a completely different way. And that just shows that we're just getting started with this smart building stuff. And there's so much to learn. And the way real estate is going to change in the coming years is astronomical. And then you add the AI piece into it, and we have a lot to do together, and we're really, we look forward to it. Oh, I have another one. So this is a bonus one. This is the building put together by Citycon in Helsinki as well. It's the shopping mall of Lupilava. And what is so interesting about this is they actually have their own energy plant in the basement, and this energy plant is feeding the whole surrounding area, all the city, all the apartments and these types of things. And it's added in there again, as context is everything. The uniqueness is important to be thinking about, and is also everything. And then also the sky is the limit in so many ways of what we can do. So we need to focus on function, and then the solutions need to drive value. What we're seeing now is, 3 years ago when we started, 4 years ago, there was a debate of, is smart important? Is smart needed? Is it interesting? And there was a real active debate, and there were a lot of developers that didn't think that was necessary, or project managers. But now I think that debate is kind of come to a point where people agree. People agree that the real estate sector should be digitized. They agree that technology can help. And now we're starting to see buildings kind of overshoot how well how much technology they're putting in, to the point whereas when you ask them, how are you going to use this technology? Yeah, they don't really know yet. It's not really part of the plan. The plan will come later. And that's really interesting. And what we're going to see, I believe, in the next 3 to 5 years is a rationalization. How do we actually take value cases and apply them to smart, and make sure that we follow them all the way through, and make sure that every single technology that we use and that we are implementing in our processes, implementing in our organizations, are useful and driving value for the bottom line. So we also have some exciting news with Neowit, is that we, about a year ago, of course, one of the biggest challenges for the purchasers, for the people trying to develop these smart buildings, especially for people who are not technology natives, that's actually not their core business. Their core business is real estate. How do we help them kind of navigate this space better? So last year, we started certifying solutions against the same framework. And this allows us to help buildings find solutions that meet their needs and meet their opportunities. But it also helps us to help solutions find each other, so that they can more seamlessly integrate, so that they can work together more effortlessly. And the Smart Building Collective hopefully builds that community, so that social cohesion is also there, right? Because the hardest part is when a building buys 3 or 4 solutions and says, hey, can you guys talk to each other? And then these solutions are kind of fighting for territory. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? These types of things. If we can do that work in advance, and we can do that work before going into buildings, that's going to be far more effective than where we are now. And so Neowit was recently solution certified. Congratulations to Neowit. And what you can see is that their tech stack starts to get really far and advanced in the solution and the SBC framework. So they have a ton of functionality in the building usage area, user behavior and collaboration. They're really good at starting to help people find these, what they need when they need it. Building environment is also powerful in their integrations with different sensors that help you to do indoor air quality and sound and these types of things. building performance, those insights on how the asset is performing, and then of course keeping things safe. They have some really strong cybersecurity aspects and those types of things. But it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for having me. If you're interested in getting in touch, I know we won't meet everyone, but feel free to connect, and we'd love to welcome you into our world, and hopefully get to do some nice work together and some nice projects.